ELAGs, that's what it is. Electronic Pandora, ELAG, the Penelope complex, pathologies of the body electric. The basic idea being that the body electric is what we carry with us. It's always, body is electric. So there's a very strong connection between the outside and the inside, and an ever more intimate interaction between both. And so the idea that things can actually affect us in our flesh, so to speak, as well as in our mind, is tolerable. It's possible. 3 eras. So these are 3 eras of representation of the body. The first one is the oral period, limited to a very small amount of technologies, or technologies at least that were not developed in this kind of mechanical era, the second one. And the third one is the one of the electronic era. And these 3 carry with them, and I have brought a video to show you a bit about how that can be explained. But these eras carry with them a representation of the body and a representation of health, in fact. It also responsibility. Very interesting to try and compare these 3 things. The oral era is the era where everything, the body is completely involved with the environment, but limited to its own sensorial reach. It's very integrated, connected to the ground and to the planet or the cosmos. It has, at the more higher level, cosmological kind of extension of the body. Whereas in the second era, the era of mechanization, the body is suddenly turned into this. Suddenly, Vesalius gets into it, much against the religious principle of organization of physical experience, and starts analyzing it in order to be able to control it better, and it becomes an object of a separate object from anything, from a sense of self. It becomes something that it's the big division, body and mind, starts in the same fashion. And here's one which I like very much because it's a contemporary to that of Vesalius, but I like it. It looks like a prediction of electricity, but it's quite. Here's for the ladies, so they don't get jealous. And here's actually getting, as it gets more and more sophisticated, and you think about how much both work of actual physical contact with the body, but also of its representation, a number of representation of it that brings this sort of image. Telegraph brings in the third era, the marriage between language and electricity, multiplication of the maximum speed by the maximum complexity. Language is the maximum complexity of combination and recombination. So extraordinary innovation and totally big transformation of the relationship between body, self, and the world. We shape our tool, and thereafter our tools shape us. So we do this. I have a very thought in Catalonia I was allowed to be irreverent, but there's a quite irreverent image of a person sitting, being completely charged up with electricity. That's the vision of what I call the technobiology of electricity. It's within and without the human body. It's kind of, McLuhan called electricity the central nervous system projected outside the body, the whole electrical grid, hence showing an extraordinary interdependence, which we discover going more and more and more now with environmental sensors and so on, and GPS and the various things. The total independence of a physical, fleshy body and a total grid, the global thing. All electricity being connected to all electricity, all information being now connected to all information. So an extension of ourself, which is very, very much happening predicted by McLuhan. In the analog mode, the electricity emulates muscular functions of the body, which is heat, energy, and light. That's the analog use of electricity. It produces that, and we start with that. But when you turn electricity to digital, the electricity suddenly becomes cognitive. Electricity goes and becomes information. The third phase, which is the turning it into mobile or wireless, it emulates cognition in digital mode, but it becomes cognition in the wireless mode. So all digital appliances are extension of our senses and our communication capabilities. Some of them, such as a cell phone, bring the electric grid back to the body. The cell phone is basically the reintegration of the world into your pocket, but it's bringing the world back to you, back to your body. Technobiology of wirelessness. Wireless means permanent, ubiquitous access to all our extensions. The cellular phone spells the integration of the whole world within the personal body of space of the user. You are going to find people who are going to actually put them under their skin. Not that I, recommend this, but it's done. People actually want to have under their skin a lot of electronic communication. There are now identity people who have or love you messages between husband and wife or lovers, which they actually graft into their palm. So obviously there is this need for integration is actually very strong. So that's the artist kind of approach. Wearable computing heralds the quasi-internalization of the process, and then I have what I call the discrete charm of the cybourgeoisie. These are three friends of mine. The one on the left is Steve Mann, a colleague, and he was a member of the board of the McLuhan program, scientific committee. He was practically born with a camera, and he was one of the leaders of the Wearable Computing Center at MIT, and then he came to Toronto, and this is the phase where he was working on getting himself online all the time. Not like the Jenny girl who had a webcam and you could see her all day long if you care to, which I never actually really did. No, he was actually showing. I think I have an image of him. Yes, he was actually showing what he was seeing to the world on the web all the time. This is a conference. I am in Korea, in the center there, and then he is in Toronto, and this is his desk, and he's looking at me, and this is just basically what he puts on the web. So he was living literally a life that he was projecting by camera and by speaking and so on, right there online. This Stellark is the other one, the second cybourgeois is Stellark, a great artist from, and he's come here many times to Barcelona, a great artist from Australia, who connects his nervous system directly to the internet and creates dance movements for another person who is also connected from the internet via Stellark. He has this kind of basically extending. Now these artists, of course, you could say they're explorers, but basically what they're doing is predicting where we're going. You ask the artist if you can see well what the artist is doing. You can actually say where we're going. The artist is ahead, knows more than the scientist or knows more than the engineer, simply doesn't express it the same way. This is a brilliant prediction of where we're going. This very strong connection that we have with electricity. The same with this guy. Here's Warwick. He's an artist. He's also a professor. He's also a researcher. But this guy is implanting sensors into his body in order to create kind of a direct connection between the environment. It begins with just architectural issues. Open the door, close the door, get the garage going, But it can become much, much more refined, and it become very, truly interactive. So these are the type of thing. The body electric is not a new idea. As you can see, the thing on the right is an example of acupuncture point of the Chinese tradition, and these were actually currents. I have experienced very strongly homeopathy working in that particular sense. Points of action in your body that actually respond to things that we had no clue about in a Western Vesalius, cut the body, put it back together like a motor car, vision that we had. The one on the left, of course, is the symbolic too. You've got the flesh in red, you've got the physical environment in black, and the electronic connections in blue. You'll see a lot of these. It's a good code to follow in what I'm going to show you. An augmented body, certainly. Augmented powers, the telepresence, all the aspect of augmentation, increase of capabilities and of distant access, I would say. Fuzzy boundaries. I ran a conference in Ars Electronica in 2005 on hybridity, how we are becoming less, there's like even, there are so many aspects even of our chemical composition that are a kind of a marriage between technology, a production environment, and biology, our own body. So whichever way you look at it, even when you think about the aura that we project and that all the mobile communication that we access and access us, creating a certain kind of aura, all the boundaries are becoming fuzzier and fuzzier. In other words, less and less easy to simply clearly say, well, this is where my body begins, this is where it stops. Total interconnectivity with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is the natural child of a not teleology, but teleology. That is a sense of something going somewhere. Wi-Fi is a maturating point of something that's been growing since the telegraph. But it is total interconnectivity, so that's the restructuring sensory life. We will see some details of that. Sensory life is incredibly quickly victimized by dominant technologies. Literature, for example, since we have, I'm glad to talk to Laura about her specialty. Literature, it was created as the separation between the body from the outside world and its reconstruction inside. Literature is a translation into sense of all the senses. So you have to retranslate all the senses inside your head, and you create a private imagination. That's what literature was all about. But that was also a restructuring of sensory life under the impact of the alphabet. It's just another story, and I can tell that story if you want in discussion. But basically, literature creates, or writing creates, a revision of all the senses that brings on the Baroque era. The Baroque era is literally artists of music, of painting, of sculpture, of gardens, of food, of reinterpretation of all the senses under the fantastic impact of the abstraction that the alphabet brings to the body. The muses are the daughters of the alphabet. I didn't invent this. In fact, no, sorry. They are. Musometor. That's what Aeschylus says through Prometheus. Musometor. Symbolon. Synthesis ton symbolon. The synthesis of the symbols that is creating the muses. What an incredible prediction in a single little, discourse that comes from Aeschylus. Restructuring sensory life. So yeah, we are restructuring sensory life now. Have been doing. The kids have done it very much faster, But it's true. It's true. Whether you look at the way we dance, what dances we do, what rhythms our body take today in clubs and so on, or whether you look about how we define our diseases, yeah, we are restructuring our sensory life. So I'll show you a few. Changing our use of time and space, that should be obvious. Absolutely demultiplying use of time, and telepresencing ourselves in all kinds of possibilities. We've created for ourselves a bionic condition. The bionic woman, you remember her? Or Blade Runner's replicant. Again, artists telling us where we're going. It's really quite stunning. So we should always have them in mind. Anyway, so here. This was an example of a bionic condition. It's an old message, okay, but it comes from Roy Ascott. I don't know, anybody heard about Roy Ascott? One of the most intelligent men, I think, in the whole field of technology and art. But anyway, he's explaining me, disaster struck last week. A critical crash corrupted, erased all my email files. I'm back online, but it put things out slightly. I love the thing. He had a lobotomy, you see? That's what I call a lobotomy. We'll see some more of that. But basically, that's what it is. We take this as an external kind of thing, but it has destroyed your day. It may even destroy your week. These things actually come in, and they interfere with your life in a way that physically is experienced as a block. So new bionic ailments. I want to emphasize that I'm not talking about the serious stuff. That's the serious stuff. Clinical issues, radiations, and what cell phones do to your poor little brain, eyesight problems, migraine, ergonomics. Yeah, this is for real. We already know that's a problem, so I'm not talking about that. No? Nor am I talking about something else, which we should talk about at some time. What happens to technology itself? Obsolescence, breakdown, spam, viruses. What happens to your computer? It gets sick, and that's bad for you as well. No, I'm not talking about that. That's not interesting. What's interesting is this: what happens to us as we use such an intimate array of technologies? Okay, so we're going to see about you guys. Confession time. Please recognize yourselves. Whatever it is, once you are hooked, you cannot no more live without it. Yeah? Is there anybody who refuses to recognize this? PC, as chained to my PC, personal computer, cellular phone. Do you sleep with it? On, accessible? How many do? All right, so there we are. So I'm not saying it's a disease, but it's getting close. So email, your obsession with email. By the way, I have them all. So I'm first confessor. All right? So it's time for what, the old chapter. You can all go on the floor and, and also confess yourself. But it's true. I have Wi-Fi-nitis. I actually, I'm obsessed with connecting with Wi-Fi. It's not because I absolutely need to read my mail. It's the sense of belonging. It's a kind of sense of belonging, which I think is actually perfectly lovely. But the fact remains, it's obsessive. So SMS. Well, I'm not a huge SMSer, but I know people who can't stop. So social software, the Facebook world experience, the MySpace stuff. Everybody gets these kind of totally addictive relationship. I can't say I have an addictive relationship to Facebook. Facebook, an addictive relationship to me. It's absolutely a pain. I'm thinking of getting out of it completely. I'm just like, it's replaced email. So anyway, blogs, of course, all these are clearly. Here are some of the symptoms of internet addiction. I didn't invent this. This is documented. And you can check yourself whether you do this. Using the online service every day without any skipping. That seems to me banal. I mean, like, hello, remove that one. That's so obvious. Losing track of time after making a connection. Right. Going out less and less. Yeah. Well, yes and no. If you can now with your this is where technology really helps. Now with BlackBerries and with iPhones, you can still go out. you can have your cake and eat it, right? Okay. Spending less and less time on meals at home or at work and eating in front of the monitor. I have to say, does really happen. So yeah, denying spending too much time on the net. Others complaining of your spending too much time on net in front of the monitor. Checking on your mailbox too many times a day. Thinking you've got the greatest website in the world. Now, that's not me, but some of you may. And dying to give people your URL. Logging onto the net while already busy at work. Yes, well, everybody does that. Sneaking online when spouse or family member is not at home with a sense of relief. I mean, that's really so. Anyway, occupational impairment due to internet addiction. And you see you've got some people. 51% have severe addiction. Moderate for 34 and mild only 15. Well, that shows really. That's, I mean, I forgot when that was done. As I said, I didn't do this, but I thought it was fun to see what are the symptoms.
What's interesting here is that it's just fun. They don't take account that you work actually on the net.
Oh yeah, of course. No. Of course, but that's part of the joke side of all of this. But okay, but here's the real thing: anxieties, lag, like jet lag. The sense of guilt for not having answered tons of email. How many of you have feel comfortable? How many of you, just show your hand, say, I am up to date with my email? All right? How many of you, you are? Oh, you're a good girl, because most people, how many of you feel guilty? All right, brothers and sisters, give me your hand. It's very funny. Anyway, I'm glad I got this because I thought it was something that I was only one. Fear of virus attack. Actually, I don't have enough fear of virus attacks. It's going to hit me again, but I did get killed by viruses before. I had what was the one which was, I think 7 years ago, Melania? No, it had a woman's name. That's a woman's name. It really gave me a bad kiss. Anyway, passworditis. Oh, that's one of the worst. Oh, yes. And they're never happy with the one you're offering them. No, so you got to do new ones. All my airline companies. Anyway, so that's a serious problem. Fear of giving out your card numbers.
I've opened a file. It says passwords.
Yes.
And I have there all my passwords.
Yes.
All the emails that I received. This is your password. Okay, I keep it there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know yeah. You have to, but anyway, that's a good solution. But the card numbers is I think it's over, but it certainly was at the beginning. People were just terrified of paying by their cards, but that's over. I think it's like broadband anxiety is not over. I knew a guy who was ready to, not anymore, but I knew a guy who was in fact quite well known, Joichi Ito, who used to say, I would move town for a larger bandwidth. And that was like a Middle Ages saying, I'd move town for a larger river. I mean, it's exactly. So broadband anxiety, it's less, but it's still, Oh, and then there are new diseases which I forgot to mention. The Italian special seizure disease, which is how to control everything and get control of the bandwidth. It's an Italian disease, but I'll talk about it. Depressions.
We have an Italian here.
Yeah. No, I live in Italy, so I can tell you, and it's not. I would never say anything really nasty about Italy, but right now they are having a horrible time with.
Yeah, I'm Italian.
No, we can talk about this, but it's true. The Senate is promoting a vote right now, requiring the possibility of suing Facebook, MySpace, Second Life for anything that contravenes Italian law in terms of the safety of citizens, obviously, and so on. Well, I mean, that's a tendency of control which begins electrofascism, and I don't really want that. I mean, there must be ways of concealing. So we got to be very careful. Anyway, but it is a form of seizure. It really is. Fascism is a seizure. Anyway, a lack of connectivity is clearly a depressive thing. You have that all. Weathering downtime is also, you're like waiting for it to appear. Loss of self-confidence, decreasing email. That was more of a joke, but it's true. I mean, it's people or getting more spam than email. What's the proportion now? It's a real pain. Information overload from increasing email. That's another depressive situation because you simply can't keep it up. I don't have a blog. I cannot afford to have email and a blog. I can't. It's just too much work. I already spend enough time in front of the bloody screen. There are areas where you say, well, no, I'm not going to go there right now because I can't handle the pressure. Losing unsafe content to unpredictable crashes. I mean, we'll get back to the whole question of backups. Phobias. Cyberphobia, the fear of the computer. This term was coined by as an aversion or anxiety caused by technology. Dell Computer Studies shows 65% of people have some fear of technology. 36% of the office computer users feel their skill levels are inadequate. Technophobia, technostress, and the matrix, fear of the matrix. Fear of real-life matrix will be monitoring you. Under Bush, this was a real concern. Many people thought, well, I don't know whether Obama is going to bring everything that Bush did before, as he did with Guantanamo, but surely the Homeland Security system was a preoccupying trend towards control of the citizen, for sure. And so it's important to keep this in mind as well. The matrix has arrived, the most massive database surveillance program in history, and so on. Information, potentially more information than you ever expect, past addresses and phone number, marriage, divorce. Yes, all of that stuff is available. Now, of course, all of that stuff is already available. Whether you put it into some kind of database in a particular way or not, it's already there. We are preceded by our digital persona. People Google you to find out about you. So that's your sort of digital shadow, so to speak. But you have this massive quantity of data about you, which is available already. Now, of course, you still have to be a very good hack to get access to the thing that you actually really want. And of course, there are very good hacks out there which are getting access to what you really want. The fact remains, though, that the fear of the matrix is a general condition that we share, that we may actually overcome at some point. I don't know. Virus contaminations. The cloner that was perhaps the first virus, and it was was a lovely idea. I mean, this is the thing. The first virus was an artwork. It was a thing that popped into your program and sent you a little poem. Mm-hmm. Can you believe it? How sweet, and then how painful, the whole thing becomes with the mad sort of the spam, the cookies, all that stuff. Obsessive compulsive behavior. Owning the latest equipment, the highest performance. My CPU is bigger than yours. This is a general thing that also with cars and with cameras and so on. But it's also particularly true in the area of, I've known people to really literally compare their CPU's power and speed. So, Wi-Fi-nitis, I have that. I'm a Wi-Fi hunter. I would like Wi-Fi to be everywhere and open and free, anywhere in the world. Anyway, Googleitis, people who have to Google everything, including the next meal, which they often do. File saving, different kinds of way of file saving, different attitude towards file saving. I think I will not show you the way I do my file saving. It's a kind of a mania as well. Pretty horrible. Neurosis. You have neurosis, fear of invasion of privacy. People get very nervous. Penelope complex. Can you guess what the Penelope complex is? You remember Penelope? You know what she did? She had all these people who were asking to marry her because Ulysses wasn't coming back. And it's been a long time. And she said, come on, girl, don't play hard to get. He's gone. He's finished. And then she said, yes, I know. I will make there were 5 or 6 of them. I'll make up my mind among you when I have finished this clause, right? So what would she do? She would do the clause in front of her. She was always spinning and what. And then, of course, at night she would undo the thing and everything. So it was an interminable job. Well, that's the way we write now that we have access to this easy fluid. It's not fluid enough because it's not as fluid as your thought, but it's way too fluid to be just left alone. So you keep changing the stuff in the morning that you wrote in the previous evening. I call it Penelope complex, which makes writing for some writers much more difficult. I love DDD, deletion deficit disorder. You can't delete anything. So you just jam-pack your computer with all kinds of stuff. And so that's a kind of a neurosis. Surfing for symptoms about your what ails you, but surfing for symptoms what ails your machines. Worrying about things and surfing for symptoms is a neurosis. Because we can get so much more information now and so much faster that we're constantly sort of relating to the machine the way we're related to our own thinking. Fear of backup. Now, this is a very serious one. Most serious people back up. Unserious people like myself don't back up, lose it all, and then wonder why. What's the fear of backup? Is it laziness? I don't know, but it's a neurosis for sure. Spam rage. Spam rage drives some emailers to extreme. Charles Bucher, this is an example. Charles Bucher was so mad, he did what others have longed to do. He told the spammer to stop or else. But this Silicon Valley tech worker went too far, prosecutor says. Last year, he allegedly threatened to shoot and torture an employee of a Canadian company that spammed him, court documents say. You can get really, really raged. The testicular cancer survivor was especially enraged at spam touting penis enlargement. So no wonder. But by the way, spam rage, you get really, really mad about it. Now, this is very bad. Partial or total lobotomies, hard disk loss. Who keeps backups anyway? So we said, I've had 3. I had 1 total and 2 partial lobotomies. Okay, so what happens? You've lost it all. You've lost your text, you've lost your addresses, you've lost your bills, you've lost the ones you owe, you've lost the ones they owe you. You've lost everything. And it happened. It happened once. The total lobotomy was in the airport in Orio sul Serio, where somebody just picked my computer and ran off with it without me seeing it. And the other one was just the virus, Melania, I think was her name. Melissa. There we go. Thanks. Melissa. Well, Melissa got me. So that was so what happened? For about an hour, you're dumbstruck. You're sort of... And what I did was, it's the only way to survive. I thought, all right, I'm going to rebuild it all, and it'll be a fresh start. Guess what? It was. The treat, it was. Okay, all right, I did lose a lot. But then I also gained a lot by rethinking, reorganizing, and so on. So this lobotomy is not necessarily always really... It is bad news, of course. It's like an accident. You do redo things, but you can also rebuild. Anyway, so wipe out of whole directories. Dora. Your system may need reconfiguring, but so do you. So it's a stressful condition. So this is another series of it that's more speculative, let's say. But still, emigration of mind from head to screen. So much of what we are taught by reading and in our schools to do inside our head is now done better outside our head in front of a screen. I've created a science which nobody has really picked up yet, but it's called screenology, the science of screens. our relationship to screens. We spend as much time now with a screen as we spend thinking within our own head, practically all days. So whether it's a cell phone screen or whether it's this screen, or we're basically transmitting a lot of our internal faculties, exporting them outside. Second life is the exportation of the internal imaginary. It's the reversal of Don Quixote, I say, because in Spain it's easy to use that example. But Don Quixote basically, by reading so much fiction, created virtual reality inside his head. Second life is putting the virtual reality outside in front of a screen. Think about this as a process happening with other functions and other skills that we have learned to do, like designs, classification, organization, memory, remembering things, obviously retrieving them. All of these things are emigrating now from the mind to the screen, again, to serve a purpose. That is, to put in common the information that was once simply stored in a single person. That has its benefit, has its danger, but it also has its benefit to put in common. Because in the past, what happened was the literacy put separately in books, libraries, heads, people, specialists here and there, put that separately. Suddenly electricity put it all back together again. So there's a purpose for this emigration of mind from head to screen. But it comes with a sensibility issue, right? The digital persona, I think I said what it is. We are double multiplied by our digital personas. We may say it's unitarian, but it also can be distributed in all kinds of fashion. The blogger selfhood. What's the self sense? What's the sensibility of self? The sense of identity that a blogger carries with himself or herself. What kind of you are your network. Your network suddenly gives your sense of your own extension. Avatar bulimia. That's really a second life disease. But I have friends who have 5 or 6 avatars. Now, how do you handle 5 or 6 me's? You remember Little Me in the film? What was the name of the Powers? Austin Powers and the Little Me. Well, we have little me's. All these little me's that are multiplied, being our identity. So anorexia also. You have you don't appear. Gender bending. That's an old one. Pretending to be another sex or something is practiced very frequently online. Anonymous poking of pseudo handles, people who don't want to ever show up or create handles of themselves, which are identity. Now I say identity crisis. They're not all crises. They're explorations. They are ways by which we are adapting to this environment. The whole internet, the whole web world, Web 2.0 particularly, with all the social software and social networks, is absolutely a form of exploring the possibilities of that connection that I'm saying between the electronic and the biological, the electronic and the mental, this third space, so to speak. How can we deal with these problems when they happen? Well, you remember, anybody had an Amiga here? No, you're digital natives. I'm a digital immigrant. Anyway, I had an Amiga. I used to carry it around in planes and everything. It was just awful. It was very heavy. But Amiga was before Apple really developed good art programs. So Amiga was the best artist computer for interactive systems, and I had some wonderful things. And I used to show them around Europe, carrying my Amiga around. But the Amiga had this problem that every now and then it crashed. And so in order, it didn't just go dead. It would crash, the screen would light up, and it would say, Guru meditation number. So it's go to the Guru meditation to just calm down from the crash. So that's what it was. Is there a techie in the house? Clearly, I used to live it in a way that I just couldn't do anything without having the techie doing things for me, because it was better now. But hope for an improved round of technology. XP over Millennium. Can anybody cure you from Vista? It's a big Vista. Now, I think Millennium was really absolutely the worst. But I went through Millennium, and it was it's like a very bad fever. Anyway, so these are problems. Now, do we need a new specialization in psychotherapy? And that's where I wanted to show you this video. LAN Job is a colleague of mine at the University of Toronto. He's now actually replacing me for some courses at my Mind and Media Society class. I think, is quite a very special artist who is a philosopher artist, also a psychotherapist, and creates these out of the need to explain what he understands is happening to the world. And his first video is this one, which I want you to see, because it's about what cultural content is brought to the definition of diseases. How, in fact. And then he reviews what I have just told you, but from his voice, and then also goes into other directions. But I think that seeing it after I talked is actually better than seeing it before. That's why I reversed the order of the presentation. And then after it's finished, I will come back to, try and see what is health. How can we redefine health in our present global condition?
Welcome to the fishbowl of our perceptions, the invisible habitat of our minds, of our way of thinking and seeing and communicating. We hope to get out of this fishbowl to see if there's a connection between our perceptions and the media we swim in. Right now, according to Marshall McLuhan, our minds are influenced by the literate print tradition. So, let's choose a book. Notice the title of this work, The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The title reveals that the work is a classification of data about mental behavior that is somehow out of order. This is a snapshot of how print culture perceives mentation. In 1960, it listed 60 mental disorders. In the year 2000, the most recent revision lists more than 300 mental disorders. The DSM is a book filled with disorders classified by type. Distinctions are made between infantile disorders, adolescent disorders, cognitive disorders, biomedical disorders, substance abuse disorders, psychotic disorders, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, psychosomatic disorders, factitious disorders, dissociative disorders, gender and sexual disorders, eating disorders, sleep disorders, impulse disorders, adjustment disorders, personality disorders, and disorders that don't fall into any of these disorder categories. In the 100 years since Sigmund Freud discovered the unconscious and invented psychoanalysis, not only have many dozens of disorders been invented and categorized, but many dozens of theories have been put forth to explain the nature of the human psyche, its disturbances, and its cures. Psychodynamic theories, behavioral and cognitive theories, existential, gestalt, and transformation theories. The fact that the DSM is a book, the product of a literate culture, and that it classifies mental illnesses simply shows the fragmentary, rational, and categorical nature of the print mind. Or so says Marshall McLuhan. According to McLuhan, the technologies we use to perceive, manipulate, and communicate the world around us actually shape our perceptions, our communications, our very minds. The medium is always the message. If the media determine our message, let's try to detach ourselves from our current media. Let's try to escape our fishbowl to get an idea of what kind of water our minds are swimming in. To do this, let's go back before print entered the human picture, and then let's go forward to a time when electronic media have become dominant. Let's place our culture in context. Let's go back 1,000 years to a culture that has no phonetic alphabet, no printed books, an oral culture that uses pictographs, glyphs, drawings, sculptures. Its communication would look something like this. These images or symbols aren't letters. They have no particular order. They don't force the eye to take a linear path. They don't cause the mind to think in an orderly manner. More importantly, they don't create a reader getting the meaning of a text and putting it in his or her mind. They don't create conscious individual identity. They invite tribal participation. Their identity is not visual but auditory. The auditory world is all around them, stronger than the visual world. The visual separates, the auditory connects. The visual is sequential, the auditory holistic. They are not separate individuals, they're connected. Connected to the world, and to each other, and to themselves. It may even be that their unconscious and conscious minds are connected, not separated. Dreams may be part of their daily reality. The logic of the unconscious, which organizes reality symbolically, mythically, may be active during the day. They may be able to pass from dream world to physical world with no threshold. Many of their daily actions would be in the service of dream visions. What would we say of them? What would we say in the 20th century of someone who had daily visions and acted on them? If any of them had a disturbing dream, he might consult a shaman, who might see the dream as a warning, a curse, an intrusion by a demon. Would they have anxiety about their identity, the meaning of their life, their relationships? Certainly if they were shunned by the tribe, a severe punishment for people whose identity was social. What if one of them were mad? Would the village assume she was possessed, cursed, or divinely inspired? Would they have a treatment for her, a place for her? We cannot really grasp the psychic reality of living in an acoustic culture. Marshall McLuhan inferred their psychic state by considering acoustical space in contrast to visual space. His description goes like this. For tribal man there was no past, no history, always present. Where the visually oriented person seeks to make connections, the non-literate person sought to create intervals and gaps. Gaps invite participation by others. The spoken word resonates, involving all the senses. Acoustic space had its center everywhere, its margins nowhere. They wore masks, which were patterns of energy, group furniture, the group face. The function of art in tribal society was to connect the group with the cosmos. The unconscious was not moved into consciousness. They were able to dream awake. If we look at the dozen or so types of mental illness categorized by the DSM, we may wonder how many could apply to such people. Psychodynamic disturbances, their conscious and unconscious were merged. Where to begin? Transference problems, their entire world was transference. Where to begin? Existential anxiety, loss of meaning, alienation. Were they not embedded in group consciousness? Apparently, the DSM categories fit the disturbances that would come with visual, literate, print cultures. Let's jump ahead in time to the heyday of psychotherapy, the 20th century. Here we are in the 20th century. What have we missed? Well, the Latin alphabet was invented around 700 BC, the runic alphabet in 150 AD. The Latin alphabet conquered Europe around 700 AD. This forced our minds to string letters into words, words into sentences, and sentences into manuscripts. With Gutenberg's invention of the printing press in 1450, putting things in logical order was seeping into everyone's mind. This gave us the Industrial Revolution and science. By the beginning of the 20th century, literate people had logical, inquiring minds, seeking to find the nature and causes of things. One of the heroes of this story, Sigmund Freud, would investigate the nature of the human psyche and the cause of neurosis. But let's stay out of our fishbowl as long as we can. The process we went through in creating an alphabet, writing manuscripts, and publishing books had a McLuhan-esque effect on us. These media became in some way our message. Let's turn once again to McLuhan to hear what he considers the effects of print technology. Print teaches privacy, self-reliance, initiative, everything we prize in the Western world: individualism, private judgment, a unique point of view. All these are favored by the printed word. Print teaches the habit of sequential analysis and of fragmentation of all motion into static units. The literary mind tries to connect and classify mythic and symbolic materials by reducing what is oral to visual forms of order. While language extends all our senses, writing limits words to the visual. The idea of words corresponding to reality, the idea of matching, is characteristic only of highly literate cultures in which the visual sense is dominant. Print culture leads to mechanization, the industrial forms of mass production. All technologies create climates of thought and feeling. Mass production alienates man rather than involving man. Industrial and print technology have a profoundly fragmenting effect on human sensibilities. Print also retrieves the past, making the entire world of antiquity available in book form to individual readers. It permits a high degree of analytic specialization and the examination of the inner life. Consciousness and dreams have a structure that can be aesthetically enjoyed. The dream world in the Freudian decades seemed to offer a refreshing organic spontaneity in the midst of mechanical and industrial development. Marshall McLuhan noted that every new technology will retrieve something from the past and make it new again. Indeed, almost every 20th century psychological theory retrieved symbols and archetypes from the distant past. Freud retrieved the story of Oedipus and his mother. Jung retrieved the entire pantheon of Greek mythology. Current theories retrieve shamanism, Indian Tantrism, Zen Buddhism, Greek theater, and Asclepian homeopathic techniques. We might wonder if the DSM actually sets out to define the maladies not of human beings, but of print culture itself. Alienation, the loss of mythic unconscious, the loss of oral involvement, fragmentation, separation. These are all effects McLuhan attributes to print. And it is interesting that the cure for all of this is a return to the oral. Psychoanalysis and psychotherapy use the talking cure. The 20th century began with print and ended with digital technology. The telephone was developed commercially in the 1940s, television in 1950, the cell phone in 1980, along with home computers and CDs. The Internet became public with the World Wide Web in 1991. By 2000, everything was digital, from digital cameras to cell phones to television. The 20th century ended with electronics and new media converging, overlapping, bringing digital capture and creation to everyone. It was a century in transition from visual print culture to a new tactile electronic culture. The effects of the introduction of electronic media into a mechanized print culture confused everyone. Educators found themselves facing kids who were agitated, inattentive, and bored in class. Advertisers were ecstatic, as were politicians. These two groups learned quickly how to use the new media. While children embraced video games, downloaded music, and chatted on the internet, adults found themselves more and more lost. Psychotherapists were flooded with people suffering from alienation, loss of meaning, loss of relatedness, loss of self-esteem. Could it be that the DSM was actually tracking the psychic effects of a culture in technological transition? Among the intelligentsia, two main figures stood up to figure out what was going on. Marshall McLuhan in Canada and Jean Baudrillard in France. Baudrillard noted that electronic images no longer referred to reality, but were now free-floating, detached. He called them simulacra. These simulacra were everywhere, from the war in Iraq to toothpaste commercials, suggesting there was a reality behind them when there was not. He compared our life in the world of simulacra to that of an astronaut floating in space, with images projected onto the visor of his helmet, a return to Plato's cave of illusion. We should compare Baudrillard's vision with that of Pierre Beauchesne, who in 1793 described the novel, a new medium, this way. The novel is the medium of perversion of all sensibility. It detaches the soul from all that is immediate and leads it to an imaginary world of sentiments violent in proportion to their unreality. Does each shift to a new medium take us further away from the real? Or are we simply unprepared for the soul's strange journey through time? Marshall McLuhan struggled to discern patterns of change in our psyches, in our sensory and emotional environment, with the change in media. He too sensed the unreality of the media extensions of mankind. He said, "All media, from language to television, alter the patterns of perception, such that all experience becomes a pseudo-event. That is why silence has appeared as more noble." McLuhan suggested that a new kind of identity is being formed in the electronic matrix of instantaneous communication. We've switched from a visual Euclidean space to a resonant quantum space. The message and form of electronic information pattern is the simultaneous. We must move from linear causal thinking to configuration thinking. In the new situation of being with, you don't have a point of view. You merely identify at all levels with your whole being. People become so profoundly involved in each other, they lose their sense of private identity. The impact of electronic culture on highly literate people is especially disturbing. For them, as McLuhan pointed out, the human city is a wasteland of abandoned images. Everyone is a nobody. No one has a place in the world. New technologies create one environment upon another. As for tribal man, there is for us no history. All is present. Now let's move ahead a few decades and imagine a world in which the development, convergence, and ubiquity of electronic media have been more or less completed, the 21st century equivalent of the Gutenberg Bible. Let's go to 2055. Okay, here we are in 2055. Wait a minute, is this 2055? It looks like the past. I think we failed to project into the future. And there's a good reason for this. McLuhan pointed out that we always see the future in terms of the past, like driving a car while looking out the rearview mirror. Radios were called wireless sets, automobiles were called horseless carriages, flashlights were called electric torches, and digital creation stations were called computers. Can we not see the future without referring to the past? Thus warned, let's try again. Here we are in 2055. What's it like? Well, the sun still shines, birds still sing, and rain still falls, making puddles. Among humans, communication and information has become instantaneous. Anyone anywhere can access information from anywhere else, or send information of their own for everyone else to use. Everyone has become a personal broadcaster and receiver. Images, movies, music, games, thoughts, emails, any electronic creation whatsoever is sent to known and unknown clusters of recipients and received from known and unknown clusters of senders. Each person radiates his or her interests and creativity to others who are immediately present. In this angelic realm of incorporeal communication, personal identity is projected as electronic images. Different projections for different electronic environments. Different environments for different desires. Information overload is dealt with by compressing information into sound and image clips, which convey moods, thoughts, emotions. These compressed feeling clips are similar to ancient myths. McLuhan said, "There's always more than you can cope with." Youth have devised a strategy for dealing with this quite apart from just inattention. They've devised a much more potent strategy of myth-making. A myth is an instantaneous insight that includes all the stages of a process. Incompatibility between the written word and electronic communication has intensified. Typing is slow, spelling uncertain. Compressed forms developed from leet-speak and web slang. This says, "In my humble opinion, it's probably a newbie at home. The problem is in the chair, not in the computer. Goodbye." Numbers or symbols are used for letters they resemble or sound like. Rules of grammar are forgotten. Typing mistakes are incorporated into the language. We may wonder what this has done to traditional forms of writing, like novels or poetry. Marshall McLuhan saw the future of printed books as data or information resources. Novels of the future are multimedia video games like Myst, with collective interaction replacing individual reading, group identity replacing personal identity. Creative human encounters happen in virtual environments, like Second Life, where participants create an identity, purchase land, build homes, have parties, do business, or simply play. As McLuhan said, the goal-oriented work culture wanes as objectives mix and change in an electronic flux, and play becomes the new tool for exploring the world of information. Without play, there looms the danger of madness. Individual identity gives way to role-playing, and secrecy becomes impossible. Let's look at secrecy and private identity in 2055. Members of virtual communities rate each other's looks and behavior. This rating is carried by each member for all others to see. On the web, hackers and downloaders rate each other's willingness to share in the quality of their products. Meanwhile, in the real world, banks, governments, and insurance companies are still rating people's worthiness. These data banks of ratings have created public profiles or identities of each person, an external identity that what we used to call individual identity cannot compete with. How do people cope with all this? McLuhan said, by becoming super conscious of what's going on. He wrote, "Electronic forms lead us to deeper regional cultures because of the electronic circuitry that involves us deeper and deeper in ourselves. In order to live with ourselves at such depth, in such instant feedback situations, we have to understand everything. We must dispel all unconscious aspects of our lives altogether. The easygoing lolling around in the lap of the unconscious cannot endure." Let's try to summarize the psychic shifts that have taken place by 2055. Personal identity has become group identity. Appearance is manufactured out of fantasy. Everyone is creating a profile of everybody else. Secrecy is impossible. Everyone is sending and receiving mythic dream messages, and everyone is highly conscious of everything. Where does this put the unconscious? Where does this put psychodynamic psychotherapy? To try and answer this, McLuhan reminds us to think contextually, not logically. He said, "Electronic culture is a culture of patterns, not goals. All satisfactions will be derived informationally from broadcast images. So, there can no longer be a goal of mental health. Perhaps, though, there can be adjustment or maladjustment to patterns. Perhaps the DSM may have to change its title slightly, dropping the word diagnostic, since there's nothing to diagnose, and dropping the word statistical, since there's nothing to count, and dropping the word manual, since books are a thing of the past, and dropping the word disorder, since nothing is ordered anymore. It gets to keep the word mental, however, as a charming and provocative witticism from the literate past. A new psychotherapy is in its infancy in 2055. It uses virtual environments and fantasy identities to allow people to act out their problems, visualize their dreams, picture their desires, and stand side by side with a therapist in the distorted reality of one person's contextualized life. Psychotherapy creates virtual intimacy between a client in Boston and a therapist in Vancouver. The use of fantastic avatars and unreal environments, both by the client and the therapist, unleashes more profound psychic effects than merely sitting together. The ancient oral talking cure persists, aided by the retrieval of tribal masks, bodily chants, and sacred pictures flooding the psychic landscape. By 2055, the unconscious has found a limitless stage to play on. The entire world has become an artifact into which unconscious contents are being poured. While print technology and mechanization began to destroy our world, McLuhan thought humankind would begin to heal the planet in tune with our collective psyche, that we would see it again as a mythic entity and work to restore it. Whether that will happen, we, or our descendants, shall see. Back to our fishbowl, if we ever really left it. Using Marshall McLuhan's precept that the medium is the message, we may begin to see the psyche and therapy in a new light. Ancient oral culture brought the unconscious and conscious together. Identity was communal. The world was a magical present. Right now, at the beginning of the electronic age, psychotherapy seems to be retrieving oral forms to help heal the fragmentation brought about by the phonetic alphabet, print culture, and mass production. The talking cure brings the unconscious to consciousness, helps people search for meaning in the shifting sands of technological transformation. As our electronic media become pervasive and push print culture to the background, focusing on cause and effect will wane. Rational categorizing will wane, and the exploration of roles and environments will be the order of the day. Psychotherapy will play a part in all this, but what part remains to be seen. Very soon, new forms of mental disorder may be added to the DSM. Interactive media dysfunction, obsessive literacy, logical patterning disorder. And those who cling to literacy and individualism and rational order will be seen as dinosaurs. How will psychodynamic theory progress in a non-Euclidean mental space? We might ask how creationism progressed with the advent of science. And what happens to the physical world of the senses in the future? Will there be small groups assembled somewhere in a drawing room listening to someone play the cello? Will they be podcasting it to their friends in Brazil? Will teenagers hold hands in the park after 3 months of virtual sex? Will parents have the literacy skills to read bedtime stories to their children? Will they want to? Will they need to? As humans accept electronic media as perceptual extensions, as life becomes ever more present, ever more shared, as personal identity melds into tribal identity, what becomes of personal boundaries, of personality, of the desire to be? If oral culture made us spiritual and the book culture made us rational, will electronics make us superficial, ephemeral, unfocused? Will our psyches adapt to the rush of data, or will they evolve us into some sort of breathing, chip-implanted hybrid electronic mutants? In 1968, prescient to the transformation to come, Philip K. Dick wrote a book which he called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? It may not be long before we find out. But all this nostalgia of the rearview mirror can betray us. Literate culture is dying, new digital forms are emerging. The fishbowl we knew is disappearing, and another, hopefully more sustaining, will take its place. It's all the soul's journey, after all.
I have I can conclude here, but I have asked myself the same question: what is health in the digital era? And basically, whether you are. He too brings the whole thing in a tongue-in-cheek kind of fashion, bringing out something funny, but it's funny and serious at the same time, because they are serious questions. So, do we have an idea of what health is in the digital era? And well, total ubiquitous broadband, always-on mobile access. I think that's what he says is happening in 2025, 2055. Change of self-image, of body image. In other words, expanding the body image to the whole body of the planet. That's why I'm thinking about global art, and why I think we should have a different perception of our place in the environment, and how the environment is an extension of our. The basic idea of the whole environmental issue today, the warming of the planet, the crisis, whether you believe it or not, and of course there are more and more reasons to believe in it, but there are people who are systematically not believing it. It's an issue that actually concerns the extension of ourselves, absolutely. It's a matter of seeing it much larger. I always claim, I like this image, I always claim that the image from satellites is the kind of the reflection of the extension of the body, and has created Europe. I maintain that the European continent is part of the continentalism, which is a transitional stage between nationalism and localism and the global scene. That Europe would function at all is absolutely a miraculous thing, but it's actually an example of what I'm saying. It's part of the change of self-image, but a change of image of what I belong to, right? What I'm part of. Change of scale, that's what I was sort of describing. Change of physical distribution by telepresence. Change of time, macro and micro scales. we basically are in a situation now. Probably this says in another way what was expressed in the film, that there's no room for the unconscious anymore, which is a very daring thing to say. I mean, like, you know, we've been dealing with it, and some of us spent maybe hours or large quantities of X pesos and euros in order to be cured or psychoanalyzed. There's been a great investment in this sort of thing. But it's also true that the idea of everything being conscious is a perfectly possible outcome of these fundamental changes of psychological relationship to the environment that we've had since the oral times. I like this particular sentence. This is my favorite sentence of McLuhan. It's not the Me as a Message, which very important, or the Global Village, which I think I'm continuing, but it's this one. In the electric age, we wear all mankind as our skin. What I mean, the extension of our skin, because the skin is an electrical medium, you know, and is extended by the whole planet. So that's what I wanted to say about the topic that was presented to you.